how I had a bad trip or when too much acid happens. This is not a promotion of drugs or a horror story meant to scare. It's just a little story from my life. I've always been interested in the extraordinary, with a genuine desire to understand this reality. Following the advice of some acquaintances, I turned my attention to LSD. The first experience is incomparable. Objects come alive, everything flows into one another, music feels real and three-dimensional, and by looking at a color, you can understand what it tastes like. The intricate patterns amaze with their complexity, making you feel like you're in a high-budget sci-fi movie. It's clear, as with many other drugs, the initial experience is beautiful. I started using acid once a month, coming up with interesting ideas and gradually increasing the dosage. First 1 tab, then 1.5, and eventually up to 3. For a year, I considered myself a unique person who had mastered this great tool until the bad trip happened. Over time, I began to think bad trips were just myths or the misinterpretations of weak-minded individuals. But it happened to me. As usual, I took 5 tabs to share with a friend, giving us each 2.5 tabs. This was in a suburban area of the city. I waited for the usual onset. Everything began to flow, and the music pierced through me. It was evening. About an hour had passed. Suddenly, like a lightning bolt, I found myself detached from my body and everything earthly and material in a place made entirely of light. Complex spherical forms rotated, and the multicolored rays emerging from them began to synthesize reality around me. I was stunned by this outcome. My mind was completely sober. Usually the acid felt like it intoxicated my mind, but now it was as if I hadn't taken anything except for the wild visuals. I realized I was standing in the center of these spherical machines, and they could create any reality I wanted. With a single thought, reality and objects were synthesized around me in detail. My friend told me that we had been thrown into an interdimensional level and that we needed to remember who we were and which universe we came from. After his words, I started to recall that I was actually sitting at my friend's house and that I was a human. Strangely, this definition seemed important. The real world began to take shape through these spherical machines, which soon disappeared behind the generated objects of reality. We felt a bit more grounded and decided to go for a walk. Bad idea. When we stepped outside, we noticed that the effects of the acid were gone, but in the sky, massive multicolored entities, several kilometers in size and resembling our jellyfish, floated in space. Thousands of red threads descended from them onto the city. One of these red threads touched my head and my friend's head. I asked my friend if he saw it, and he said yes. He added that if he remembered this, his real life would change drastically. The jellyfish seemed to hear us and decided to stop us. It took our souls, extracted them from our bodies, and sent us on a journey. I can't fully describe everything I saw and where I was, but I remember that at some point I managed to return to my body and check the time. Only 3 minutes had passed since we left the house, and we were sitting on a bench in the yard. I brought my friend back to his senses and said, "What the hell was that?" He replied, "That, my dear, was a bad trip." I felt very uneasy considering that I had lived an eternity in those 3 minutes, and the prospect of a 12-hour acid trip terrified me. I looked at the sky and saw the same giant jellyfish. It was displeased that I could see it. I felt a thought from it, that it would show me so much beyond my comprehension. that I would either have to forget everything or go insane. A lot more happened, most of which I successfully forgot. After about 8 hours of the trip, we were back at my friend's house with soft fractal visuals and calming music. We were sitting across from each other, afraid to start a conversation about all that had happened. Eventually, my friend said we should just let go of the experience and forget about it. I began to understand that I was already starting to forget, and we began to talk. You saw the jellyfish too, right? I asked. He responded, "Idiot, why did you bring it up? Now we won't forget." I said, "I don't want to forget," and started discussing what each of us had seen. Part of that conversation is forgotten, but I remember the events I described above, and so does my friend. When it was all over, we couldn't find an explanation and decided not to bring it up again. What's the point of all this? An acid bad trip is unpredictable, starts suddenly and intensely, and you can't control anything. This experience really messed with us. It can happen with anything and in any way. After this, I ended my journey with acid. You decide for yourself whether to give your brain such a shake-up or not. I just shared a very strange incident from my life. All the best to everyone.